In 1977, a 20-year-old woman accepted a ride from a couple in a blue van. 7 years later, she escaped, after spending most of her days locked in a box under their bed. This isn't fiction. This isn't a movie. This is the story of Colleen Stan, a young woman who lived in captivity, in silence, in the dark, for over 2,500 days. And the worst part? She could have walked away, but she didn't, because she believed that doing so would get her killed. There are crimes that shock with sudden violence, and then there are those that unfold slowly, stretching over years, eroding identity, crushing hope one day at a time. Colleen Stan's story is one of the most psychologically complex cases in modern criminal history. It's not just about physical captivity. It's about coercion so deep that it reprograms a person's mind. Colleen didn't just survive in a box. She survived under a system of psychological chains crafted by a man who knew how to destroy a soul without ever raising his voice. Welcome to Dark Crimson Files. The Ride. It was May 19th, 1977. Colleen Stan was hitchhiking from her home in Oregon to a friend's birthday in Northern California. She was cautious, turned down a few cars. When a clean-cut couple in a blue Dodge Colt pulled over with a baby in the back seat, she felt safe. The couple was Cameron and Janice Hooker. They seemed normal, friendly. Cameron offered to take a detour and show Colleen a scenic waterfall. She agreed, and that's when everything changed. He pulled over, held a knife to her throat, blindfolded her, and forced her into a homemade wooden box. A box designed to lock, a box with no light, a box that would become her world. To many, hitchhiking in the 1970s was just part of the culture, a rite of youthful independence. But that moment of trust was all it took to cross into a nightmare. Cameron Hooker had been waiting for someone like Colleen. The baby in the back seat, a psychological trap, a prop to build false security. The box he forced her into wasn't random. It had been crafted in advance, measured, reinforced, and padded for transport. This wasn't an impulsive crime. It was premeditated to the finest, most terrifying detail. The box. Colleen was taken to the Hookers' home in Red Bluff, California. What followed was beyond imagination. Cameron Hooker kept Colleen chained, gagged, and tortured in a series of escalating rituals. Eventually, he placed her in a custom-built box, 3 feet long, 2 feet wide, and just over 2 feet tall. He slid it under the couple's bed. She was kept in there 23 hours a day, in total darkness, minimal air, overwhelming heat, no room to move. She was allowed out for food and to be tortured. Hooker referred to her as K, short for K-Girl. She was told she was now the property of an organization called The Company, a secret society that enslaved and killed women who disobeyed. He forged fake documents, played recorded messages, brainwashed her. And it worked. Imagine living for years without standing up, without daylight, without your name. The box wasn't just a physical cage, it was a psychological coffin. The deprivation was strategic. It disoriented her, crushed her sense of time, identity, and self-worth. The Company was Cameron Hooker's most insidious creation, a fictional shadow network of global slavers designed to control through fear. He embedded fear so deeply that even when the door was open, Colleen stayed put. That's not obedience, that's brainwashing. The slave contract. 2 years into captivity, Cameron Hooker took things further. He had Colleen sign a slave contract, stating she was his property for life. Janice, his wife, witnessed the signing. Colleen's days were spent in the box. Her nights were spent being tortured or assigned chores. Over time, she became completely psychologically broken. Hooker allowed her to visit her family in 1981. They noticed she looked pale and thin. but she told them she was doing missionary work. Her parents never knew she was being trafficked. Colleen returned to captivity willingly, not because she wanted to, but because she thought the company would kill her and her family if she didn't. The slave contract was more than paper. It was the final link in a psychological prison. By having her sign it, with witnesses, Hooker transformed fantasy into a perceived legal reality for Colleen. She genuinely believed she had forfeited her rights, and when she visited her family, it was the ultimate test of his control. Despite a taste of freedom, despite seeing her loved ones, she went back. Not because she was weak, but because she had been trained to believe that any attempted escape would trigger deadly consequences. Hooker didn't just control her body, he colonized her mind. Janice speaks. In 1984, Janice Hooker broke. She told a pastor everything, and then confessed to police. She revealed how Cameron had previously kidnapped and killed another woman, Marie Elizabeth Spanhag, years earlier. She said he had planned to take multiple slaves, and that Colleen was just number one. Janice was given full immunity in exchange for testimony. When police found Colleen, she was still alive, but frail, traumatized, and still emotionally tethered to her captor. It took years of therapy before she could fully understand what had happened to her. Colleen had been conditioned through fear and fantasy, isolation and violence. Janice Hooker was both accomplice and victim, married to a man whose fantasies grew increasingly dangerous. Over time, the horror in their home became unbearable. Her decision to speak was the crack that let the light in. The revelation that Colleen wasn't the first target, that there was a prior victim who didn't survive, changed everything. It confirmed the worst. This wasn't a crime of opportunity. It was a blueprint for serial slavery. And when police found Colleen, they didn't just rescue a person, they liberated someone who had forgotten she was allowed to be free. Trial and aftermath. Cameron Hooker was arrested. He was charged with multiple counts of kidnapping, sexual assault, and torture. In court, Colleen testified with remarkable strength. She recounted the box, the beatings, the lies. Hooker showed no remorse. He claimed it was consensual. The jury didn't believe him. In 1985, he was sentenced to 104 years in prison. Colleen Stan went on to live a quiet life. She changed her name, worked with trauma survivors, spoke occasionally about her ordeal, but mostly she tried to move forward. As of today, Cameron Hooker remains incarcerated. His parole eligibility has been delayed multiple times. The courtroom was her second box, but this time she stood and spoke. Colleen's testimony didn't just convict a man. It educated a nation about coercive control, trauma bonding, and psychological slavery. Hooker's lack of remorse was chilling. Even when exposed, he clung to a fantasy of domination dressed in the delusion of consent. Colleen's life after the trial was quiet, but never ordinary. She became a symbol of resilience, a reminder that survival isn't just about escape. It's about reclaiming your mind, your name, your truth. Some crimes are defined by brutality, others by duration. This one, by silence. Colleen Stan spent 7 years in a box, survived through fear, and walked out on her own 2 feet. But make no mistake, the damage wasn't done in the dark. It was done in her mind. Colleen's story forces us to redefine what captivity means. It's not always chains and locks. Sometimes it's belief, fear, isolation. Sometimes the most brutal prisons are built in silence. Her escape wasn't cinematic. It was quiet, steady, earned, and her healing continues long after the box was opened. She didn't just survive a monster, she survived the unraveling of her own reality and found herself again. And that's the darkest, most remarkable part of all. If you enjoyed this episode, please do not forget to comment, like, and share this video so that other lovers of dark crime stories can also enjoy this episode. This was the story of the girl in the box. This is Dark Crimson Files. See you in the next one.